Hey everybody, I'm here with Johnny FD from JohnnyFD.com and Travel Like a Boss podcast.
Hey, what's up, guys? Thank you for having me.
So we're here in Chiang Mai, Thailand, and I'll be interviewing him, and we're on Team Red, matching colors here.
Completely by accident, by the way.
Let's start out with getting a quick overview of your life story, where you came from, where you are today.
Yeah, so I came to Thailand about 5 years ago, just on vacation, 3-week vacation, and I just loved it so much I ended up staying. And 5 years later, I basically figured out a way where I could just work online and not go back. But I would say, it was a long journey. I taught scuba diving for a while, I backpacked around for a while. I wrote a book. Actually, I wrote 2 books. The first is 12 Weeks in Thailand, and the second is Life Changes Quick. But now, most of my money comes from either my podcast, which is Travel Like a Boss, or my dropshipping stores.
Nice. So, throughout that entire process of those various stages of traveling and entrepreneurship, tell me a little bit about what your friends and family thought of you back home, because you came from a corporate or regular type job setting, right?
Yeah, so I would say almost everyone kind of goes through the same ups and downs. Where in the beginning, everyone thinks you're crazy. People give you 20,000 reasons why you shouldn't do it and what you should be scared of. But most of it is irrational fears because they haven't done it before. So if they've been before and they're like, trust me, personal experience tells me it doesn't work, then maybe you can listen. But if they've never even done it, then how do they actually know what's going to happen? So that first big leap of faith, I wrote in detail about in 12 Weeks in Thailand because it was such a big fear of mine. I was like, what will happen if I sell my stuff, if I move out here? What am I going to do about visas? How am I going to get over the language barrier? All the kind of basic questions. But that was honestly surprisingly easy. You get here and it's like you're on vacation for the whole time. And it's not that hard to go on vacation.
Workation.
Yeah.
So where along that process, because I think that's something we all struggle with, especially when we first make that transition. So where along that process did you begin to lose that fear, or do you still have that fear?
That fear is completely gone now, and also my parents no longer have that fear. I remember even for 4 years later, they would still ask me every single time they talked to me on the phone, do you have enough money for food? Are you going to be okay? And it wasn't until, I would say, 2 major milestones. The first is when someone gave them a paperback book, a paperback copy of my book, and they got to feel and hold something in their hand. They're like, wow, Johnny's doing a real business out there. And, then I'll say the second is very recently, a few months ago, I surprised my parents and I paid their property tax for the year. And to them, it was a sizable amount of money because they live in San Francisco. And to them, that showed wow, he's actually doing well enough for not only can he afford food, the $2 Thai food, but he can afford to pay a couple $1,000s for our property tax. So he's probably doing okay.
That's great. And I find that's kind of paralleled my own experience quite a bit. Just the whole parent freaking out, what is my kid doing on the other side of the world? I think it's kind of inevitable for most people.
At the end of the day, they want to see that you're healthy, that you're happy, and they can see that I'm genuinely happy. I really love my life out here. I love traveling, and it's a choice for me to keep traveling instead of moving back to the U.S. right now.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. That was a very thorough story. Thank you for that. So what started you on this path? What was that transition point for you in your life from where you were before to trying to become location independent and digital nomad?
So, in the beginning, that was just a long vacation. I'm like, well, I'm stressed out. I want to enjoy life. I want to do these things. But what really forced me to become an actual entrepreneur, digital nomad, is I ran out of money. And that's really it. I had some a little bit of savings. I sold my car, and I worked odd jobs. I worked as a dive master, basically a travel guide. And my choices were I can either teach English, I can pick fruit, I could do some kind of job that I didn't really want to do, or I could try to figure out how to make some kind of living location independently or online. And basically my first thing I made money from was selling my book. The way that started was I had this blog for 4 years while traveling called My Fight Camp, where I just documented every Muay Thai gym that I traveled to, the cost of living in Thailand, how to get visas, kind of just all these things that I liked writing about, but I never really monetized it. I did it for fun. I didn't do it to make money. So I decided to write a book, and that's called 12 Weeks in Thailand: The Good Life on the Cheap. And I started making, I think I made $600 from it the first month, and I was like, this is it. This is what I'm doing for the rest of my life. I'm just gonna write these books and just be happy. But then I realized, you know, after the initial momentum, you know, it's hard to keep making $600 a month. Maybe you might make $200 a month from the book. Just still nice pocket money, but you can't really live off of it. And that's what forced me to say, you know what? I'm sick of just getting by. I want to be able to actually make a US salary. And that's when I discovered dropshipping.
Nice. So yeah, actually, one of the reasons I really wanted to interview with you is so I've talked to various people, interviews and just, you know, casual conversation. Mm-hmm. And I think you have one of the most interesting stories, like one of the most worthy of actually writing a book about, just the process that you went through to get to where you were, to where you are now. This is very, very interesting, because most people, a lot of people will be like, okay, I want to become a digital nomad. Let me sit at home in my parents' basement and just type away. And it's a lot less interesting to actually hear about that story, because you have a whole evolution of you know, your entire life. Is very interesting.
I actually have one mega post on my blog called "How I Afford My Life to Travel," and it's this. It's this long. Well, I mean, it's longer than that. It's 4 pages long, and I broke down every month, every year of what I was doing, how much I was making, and kind of you can see the evolution. So if you don't want to read the book, I mean, the book is honestly, it's more of an interesting story where you can actually, if you read 12 Weeks in Thailand, the first book, and then Life Changes Quick as the second book, that's basically the whole story. But if you don't want to read a whole book, you can just look at the blog post and it kind of just gives you snapshots.
Yeah, it's awesome. And quick quiz, do you remember the URL of that blog post?
You know, it's if you go on johnnyfd.com and search how I afford my life to travel, it'll be on there.
Okay, great. Yeah, actually, in my interview I did yesterday with Rob Cubbin, he has income reports. I know you do as well. Actually, that's another thing. He has income reports quarterly or monthly?
Now they're monthly, yeah.
Okay, yeah.
And what that is basically, I originally did it because I think somebody had asked me, how much do you make from your books, or how much do you make from your stores, how much do you make from, you know, all the Udemy course as well. How much do you make from everything? And I was like, I have no idea. And I really had no clue, so I decided, you know, let me make a one-time income report of what I make on an average month. And I realized how valuable it is to look at the end of the month, how much you're making from each source, and not just guessing. So now I do it monthly. So if you go on johnnyfd.com and look for any of the income reports, you can see kind of the evolution.
Yeah, and what I said in the interview yesterday is actually looking at things like the income reports or his mega blog post about monthly, what does the life really look like? A lot of times those types of things can be very, very revealing in ways that he could start, for example, an info product about how to create books. And maybe that would make it look like he makes all of his income from books. But if you look at something like an income report or a self-story of exactly what happened, it's actually a lot more telling than a lot of information we get from people who are already accomplished things that we're trying to do. So that's something that I always recommend to people. So check out his, check out Rob's. It's really great stuff.
Okay, awesome. I'm glad I could share that with everyone.
Yeah, and so also I saw some posts from you recently as well. I know you've had some recent travel plans. Tell me about your recent travels. Where are you going next?
Well, I just got back from South Africa. My girlfriend's from there, and it was time to meet her family. So I met her dad, her mom, her aunts, uncles, brother, cousins, complete extended family. So that was really fun because South Africa has penguins, has safaris, all this cool stuff. And then now we're going to be going to Taiwan in a few months to go meet my family. And aside from that, I mean, we're very happy living here in Chiang Mai. We went to Borneo recently, and we did all this vacation stuff. But now I like living here for a while. I can keep growing all my different online businesses. Larissa just started her own dropshipping store, so that's really exciting. We did something called a 30-day challenge, where I know a lot of people do that for a diet or or exercise. But we decided, hey, we have a month before we have to go to South Africa for Christmas. Why don't we see if she could start her own dropshipping store before then? And so we document the whole journey on that on the blog as well.
Yeah, it's great. I was actually going to ask you about that. And before you ask you a little bit more about that, one of the things I want to point out, which he just mentioned, it's really, really surprisingly effective to have a very specific window for some kind of self-challenge, for some kind of goal. I do that with myself as well. If I want to launch a new Udemy course, I'm like, okay, I'll buy a plane ticket for 2 weeks out, and okay, I have to get this up and running before 2 weeks from now, because then I'm going to be out of the country or whatever. So things like that, having a deadline and having a kind of challenge to yourself, if it's a new initiative, if it's expanding a current initiative, very, very effective. So tell me about that though. It's her first dropshipping store, is that correct?
Yeah, definitely. So I had her, so basically she was an English teacher out here, which is one way to make money while you're traveling. Not necessarily the best, but it is a way to make money. And she hated it after a while. I mean, she liked it in the beginning, but she's like, well, now I have to deal with all this bullshit or this, bad stuff, like admin stuff, all these, she has to deal with all this stuff. She has traffic. She has and she's like, I'm done with that. What should I do? And I said, well, why don't you help me with my stores, because it's profitable. I was making, I don't know, maybe $3,000 or $4,000 a month from it, and I was like, I can easily pay for you, hire you full time and replace your teaching salary, and you can help me grow my business. So she started helping me grow that, and she added $1,000 in profitability a month. So I'm like, well, I'm happy to pay you that $1,000. But then I was like, well, instead of you just helping me with mine, because she basically did everything that I wanted her to do. I mean, there's little things like I wanted her to rewrite the descriptions, make sure the photos were up, and after that, basically her job was done and there's nothing else to do. So I said, well, why don't you just start your own store? I'll help you with it. We can make it our joint store at 50-50. And that's when the 30-day challenge came up, and our goal was to have it up and running, have suppliers. We wanted to have the site look decent and have our ads running before we got on the plane to see our parents. So while we were there, we could just relax. And it worked. It wasn't easy. If you read the blog, there's a lot of ups and downs. But when we were there, I think right before Christmas, we got our first sale. And now that we're back, we're basically getting a sale a day now. So we're pretty happy.
Congratulations. That's awesome.
Thank you very much.
Yeah. And yeah, you actually just kind of hit on something else, which made me think of something which your story kind of illustrated a good point. It can be really, really effective sometimes to get started in entrepreneurship just by purely knowing entrepreneurs, especially like this class of entrepreneurs, which is a little bit different than the old school entrepreneurs who work in startups and stuff. So especially if you're dating one, very, very easy to get into the whole thing.
Yeah, that's what I'm taking.
Yeah, but no, beyond that, I mean, just knowing a group of people who do this kind of thing, it's actually very surprisingly easy. Even if you don't, like, she didn't have drop shipping skills, but naturally when we want to hire people, which we do quite frequently for our businesses, we don't always look for like, okay, are you an expert in already what I'm doing? It's more along the lines of like, are you cool to work with? Are you going to be easy to train? Like, are you going to be a pain in the ass? Like those are actually more important than already having the skill set. So it's actually quite easy to work for people like us.
And to be honest, a year and a half ago, I didn't even know what the term dropshipping was. I mean, so now a lot of people consider me an expert in it just because I'm successful with it. But I honestly, that the very first interaction with dropshipping, I met a guy named Anton while traveling, and he was telling me what he was doing, and I was like, what is that? Is that possible? And for those who don't know what it is, it's basically you have a e-commerce store, almost kind of like a small version of Amazon where you sell books, or a small version of Overstock where you sell like, furniture or something online. And instead of you carrying the inventory or having a warehouse in California somewhere, you basically just have the manufacturer ship it directly. So for a good example of it is these microphones that we're using, or even this whiteboard that's behind us, right? These are all items that the manufacturer, they can ship it directly to your customer. So these whiteboards might cost, $50 each, and you can have a website where that's all you sell. And it's actually, it's a lot harder than, people might think it would be, because it is a real business. You still have to like set up a website, you still have to have a customer service phone number. You just have to do things, but at the same time, it actually is a lot easier than opening, let's say, a actual store where you sell teaching supplies, where you sell like art supplies. You don't have to have rent, you don't have to have employees, you don't have to have a cash register or any of that stuff. So to me, dropshipping is the perfect business for location-independent entrepreneurs, because it's a real business, yet you don't have to be anywhere. And I learned all of that from Anton's course, and I talk about it a lot on my blog, and it's under my recommended research page as well.
Yeah, it's great. And actually, you can hear how like excited he gets about this. And actually, like hearing him talk about this, the 30-day challenge, stuff like that, that's actually really got me motivated to give this whole thing a shot at some point when I find the free month. But I recommend it to you guys as well. It's a good thing to try out, right? Like, give yourself 30 days, try and do it. What he and his girlfriend.
Yeah, I would say don't try to do it in 30 days. That's really hard.
Yeah, that's true.
The only reason why I was able to do it in 30 days is because I've done other stores, and that's actually the other cool thing is. Once everything's done, like I was saying earlier, once Lewis had rewrote all the descriptions for the store, I literally had nothing else for her to do. And I had promised her that she can quit her job and she can have enough money to live. But I literally ran out of things for her to do because, after the store's up and running, you really don't spend more than an hour on it a day or something.
Yeah.
So that's when we had the idea. I was like, well, we already have one successful store and it's up and running. Why not just make another one? So that's the cool thing about it is you can use Anton's method to just replicate it and just make other stores and other niches.
And passive income, really nice.
Yeah.
So actually, that made me think of something. I had a conversation recently with Russ Smith. I don't know if you know him, but yeah, he was telling me about there's a new kind of business model that's like kind of a bit under the radar. It's sort of like dropshipping, but not quite, because there's a lot of companies in China, a lot of Chinese manufacturers that don't know anything about like online marketing, about websites, and instead of drop shipping from them, actually like working as a consultant or an online marketer for them and giving them some way to actually market themselves to directly to customers. I'm just curious if that's something you've heard about or thought about ever?
It's definitely a business model. The reason why I want to do it is I like having my own brand. So like if I was going to sell podcast mics or these video mics, I would have a brand name for that store. I would, even if I called it Johnny's videosupplies.com, that's my brand. I'm building up my own brand that I can have forever, or I can even sell it if I want. Maybe I wouldn't call it Johnny's. Maybe I'll just call it, like AAA videosupplies.com or something.
Yeah.
But if I'm building up a guy in China's brand, then as soon as he decides he doesn't want to use me anymore or he's not paying me anymore, then I build up his big business and I get nothing for it.
Yeah.
So that's why I would always do something like a dropshipping store where you own the whole thing.
Yeah, it's a good point too, and it also kind of really illustrates like they're pretty similar business models where you're kind of operating in a similar area, but actually what you're doing at the end of the day is like one, it's more like you're the business, like you're selling to customers, you're selling products to customers, versus another one, you're more of like a consultant or a freelancing role for an actual company. So like very similar in some respects, but actually totally different business model, which is pretty interesting to think about. Yeah, and so I also wanted to ask you, so I started to say, oh, give yourself 30 days to do that, and you're like, no, actually it's very difficult for the first one, which is great and honest of you to say. So I'm curious, if you were to talk to somebody who wanted to start out tomorrow, like on this path and just get really started in the best way possible, best foot forward, what would you actually recommend to them?
I would ask them like, what do you really want? Do you want do you want to just make more money at your current job, or do you want to start a business? And ask yourself, if I'm going to start a business, how much effort am I really going to put into it? Like everyone wants to work a 4-hour work week, which is absolutely possible because I pretty much live the 4-hour work week now, especially when I'm traveling. But it's not overnight, you have to basically earn that. And if you're willing to spend 2 months, maybe even up to 3 months of really working hard to start the business, and then you can relax, and then you can work for 4 hours a week, then I would do that. I actually have a tab on my blog called Start Here, and it's actually a post that I had originally written to some of my friends and family members just so I can share it with them. This is before I made my blog really public to everyone else. And it was kind of like, hey guys, I think this stuff actually works. I'm starting to make sales, and I encourage you guys to do it as well. And on there's the links to the course that I took, made by Anton, that teaches you how, literally step by step. He holds your hands. He does these screenshot videos where he basically just shows you what he's doing. He's like, this is how I chose my niches. This is how I set up the store. This is how I contact suppliers to get approved. This is how I start getting traffic. And this is what I do after I start making sales. So I would take his course, to be honest. And from that point on, I would just follow it directly. I wouldn't try to think of new brilliant ideas, that are out super outside the box. I would just follow what works, and to me, that's what worked for me, and I think it will work for you as well.
Yeah, that's great stuff. So would you say, because different people are in different situations in terms of like their age, their career path, their skill set, things like that. So what kinds of people would you say dropshipping is good for versus like other types of business models? What do you think?
So it's good for anyone who is good at following directions, okay? Because Anton will give you like 98% of what you need to do, but he's not going to teach you things like how to resize an image. And things like that are required to make a nice looking store, You can, because if you want a decent looking website, you don't have to actually know how to make a website anymore. He teaches you what pre-made templates to use, but little things like resizing image, you're going to have to figure that out yourself. And good thing there's something called Google now, where you can literally just Google how to resize an image, and you could follow the instructions how to do it.
Unless you're in China.
Yeah. But if you're not willing to, even take the time to research these things, and you expect someone to do all the work for you, then it's not going to work. But if you're the type that you're like, what, I can follow directions. I don't mind that there's one or two roadblocks, and I have to figure these things out. I'm willing to do it. I'm willing to ask for help on the forums. Then it'll work for you. And literally regardless of your age or your technical experience, because Larissa has never used any website besides Facebook or she just learned how to use Instagram, and now she's running this store 100% by herself.
It's a pretty blanket statement. Never used anything but Facebook in her life. That's interesting. I would also add on to that, probably somebody expects overnight success, because which you kind of touched on, because again, it may take several months, a lot of times it takes several years for people to really become successful.
Yeah. Well, so the reason why I say 2 months is because that's how long it took me, my first store, where I didn't know anything, and I was like, let me just work on this, pretty much every day. I wouldn't work on Sundays or weekends, but pretty much every day I worked on it. At least for a few hours, and 2 months later I got my first sale, and it's been consistent after that. And in the member forums of the course, people always post like, just made my first sale, and I always ask them like, how long did it take? Just I was curious, and almost 100% of people said 2 months.
Mm-hmm. Oh, that's great. So taking a step back now and more into the lifestyle side of things. So I'm curious, like, the transition point is always very interesting to me. So you went on vacation and you basically didn't go back. Yep. Was the reason for that because one, or maybe some combination, that you did not like what you would be going back to, or two, just like the lifestyle here was that much better, and by contrast you just stayed?
It's probably both. I think the first couple of times I went back to the US, I was tempted just to stay. I'm like, it's nice in the US,
yeah,
right?
That's true.
But literally the very first day that I get back, I'm like, life here is so much easier, it's so much better, the weather's nicer, so I just stay.
Yeah, fair enough. And actually, a good analogy that I forget who said it recently, but hanging out with a group of guys, and they're like, "Man, back in the States, I had a really high middle class salary, or a much higher salary than I do now, and I was living a second-rate lifestyle. I came to Thailand, took a huge pay cut, and I'm living a first-rate lifestyle." Yeah. And that's really important as well, I think, because being top tier in the U.S. is very, very.
Well, what's even better? So I did that for 5 years, and that's documented in the book 12 Weeks in Thailand. But what is even better is making a high U.S. salary and living out here.
There you go.
Because now you just got to save up all that money.
Yeah.
Because there's literally nothing to spend it on. Like I was like, me and Larissa started. Now that we have a second store, I basically doubled my income now, and I'm like, well, there's nothing else I want to buy. I mean, there's not. I don't want to go to an even more expensive Thai restaurant because we already go to. I mean, all Thai food's good anyways. I'm like, I don't want to move into a bigger apartment. I'm happy with my apartment. I don't want to buy a better scooter. I'm just like, well, there's nothing else to do with the money, so you might as well just save it. Yeah, it's true. Like the most expensive meal I think you can buy in Chiang Mai is like $11 or $12 or something if you go all out. Yeah. Yeah, it's really funny. So yeah, actually, can you tell me sort of in your own words about what this kind of freedom that this lifestyle provides to you? Like, what does it mean to you in terms of like your outlook on life, in terms of like your enjoyment? I would say I like not having a boss. I mean, I would say that's probably the biggest thing. I like not having responsibilities. I like being able to just wake up in the morning and be like, okay, well, if I want to go work, I can. If I want to go lay by the pool, I can. But now, when you actually have your own business, I promise you that even though you might enjoy laying by the pool for 2 weeks, you'll be like, well, I've done that. I can do that anytime I want. So let me now actually work on my business, maybe start a second store. And now when I do want to go on vacation somewhere, then I'll have extra money to spend and really enjoy it. Because, not everywhere is as cheap as Thailand. I just spent the summer in Europe, and that was expensive. That's, basically the same or more as the US. And eventually, I'll probably move back to the US. I want to have kids with Larissa. We want to get married one day. So I'm like, well, now I want to save up a lot of money and have our income high enough where we can do that. But what's nice is we'll always be location dependent. So we can live anywhere in the US. We can travel every summer to Europe if we want to. And we can have enough money where we can afford to do that.
Yeah, that's a really great point. I think maybe a lot of times people have the mental image of like, okay, I can work the 4-hour work week now. I'm going to just like party and travel and lay on the beach and stuff. And in reality, most people aren't satisfied doing that. Like you said, you do it for a little bit.
Yeah, but I would say everyone should do it for a while.
Oh, yeah. Like a couple of weeks or something, or months or something.
Like spend that month, or that 12 weeks, right? You can spend 3 months and just be like, I want to just do my hobbies. I want to do, like for me, it was Muay Thai and scuba diving. And I was like, that's all I want to do. I just want to scuba dive every day. I just want to lay on the beach and have coconuts every day. And then when I got into Muay Thai, I was like, I just want to do Muay Thai all day, which is Thai kickboxing. And I was like, that's all I want to do. And get that out of your system. Enjoy it. I mean, take it as a mini retirement. So whatever age you are now, just say, let me just try retiring for now. And after you get that out of your system, then you're like, okay, now I want to work.
Yeah, absolutely. And it kind of gets on my point, which is, taking that time, like it's not going to be an indefinite thing. Nobody can be satisfied with life just like doing nothing with their life, with their time, even if they have the financial ability to do that. So removing that necessity to work for money or to sustain a certain kind of lifestyle, once that's pretty much automatic and you don't have to work for it anymore, it really frees you up in terms of your time and mental energy to really focus on what's important to you, like what's very, very inspiring to you, whether that's Muay Thai, whether that's building your business, whether that's like starting a nonprofit, whatever that is, having the freedom to do that is so night and day, I find, because if you're working to sustain yourself, to be like, oh, I gotta afford my car payments, blah, 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 it's like, it kind of feels like you're restricted, right? Like it's not nearly as fulfilling as, oh, I don't have to actually directly input time to sustain myself. So what can I do that's fulfilling to me, that gives back, that builds something greater? And it's very, very, very nice to be able to do that.
I 100% agree. So what else should we talk about before we wrap this up?
Yeah. I guess, let's see. Do you think this lifestyle, the digital nomadism, the being location independent, do you think this is something that's well suited to everybody, or to a certain personality type, or a certain kind of person? Would you like say some people should do it, some people shouldn't? What are your thoughts on that?
I honestly think that everyone should do it. It's one of those things where even if you don't think you want to travel, that you don't think that you want to live abroad, or you don't want to check out those countries, I honestly think that if you just gave it a shot, that you would like it. I mean, really, everyone likes going on vacation. The only people that don't like going on vacation are people who've never been. That's it.
That's true. Sure. What about somebody? What about somebody has kids or like feels restricted?
No, I mean, I used to have excuses. I used to think, oh, people with kids can't travel, or people who are too old can't travel, too young can't travel. But it's now that I've done this for so long. I mean, there's literally a guy downstairs who has 2 twin boys that are like 1.5 years old, and he has a wife, and he runs his business while traveling. He rides a bicycle with these 2 kids in the back, and so I mean, literally anyone can do it. I mean, don't have excuses. Just give it a
age
shot.
is definitely not an excuse. There's so many old dudes in Asia, so like like 80, 90 plus. So like definitely you can still travel if you're old. Yeah, that's great. I think that like covers the main thing. I really appreciate you taking the time to come in and share your life story. And again, check out his blog. It's good stuff. The income reports, the stories, everything. JohnnyFD.com, and also his podcast. I'm actually on one of the episodes as well if you go back far enough. Travel Like a Boss podcast as well. So check those things out.
All right. See you guys. Good luck out there.
Thank you.